Hello, hello. So today we are going to talk about what is trauma. So first I want to start by saying that trauma is not just one big event or two big events, right? Trauma would be considered that, but it's also, I actually kind of want to change that how we use that word trauma, because I feel like it actually can be kind of misleading to some people who don't understand this work. Trauma is anything that happens too much or too fast for the body to process, right? So it's anything, any kind of event or harm or situation or interaction even that was not fully processed through the body. So most of us, I'll say the word programming, have been programmed to actually not go into our feeling and experience when things happen suddenly and fast to our body, right? A lot of us were taught to hold things in when we were kids. And when we do that, even if it's a small event like stubbing your toe, the body holds on to it. So there is a lot of crossover between nervous system and trauma work and spiritual growth, awakening, having our souls evolving, because the feeling of a trauma being trapped and stored in the body is very much starts out as like an energetic sensation, okay? Those of us who are sensitive to these types of energies can feel that. We can feel this piling up, right? I would say even people who don't consider themselves to be sensitive, when something happens in the body, you might, like, let's say, okay, so let's go back to, like, let's say there's a big event, right? Let's say you get into a car accident. So the way that you process or don't process this car accident, a lot of it depends on how you were raised and your disposition and nervous system state going into the event. So let's say there's two people involved in the car accident and they both have the same sort of impact to the body. One person ends up with chronic pain for the rest of their life, and the other person walks away with no issue and goes back to work in 2 days. Let's say it's not like a crazy car accident, maybe like a fender bender, like a pretty impactful fender bender, right? Where the body gets thrust and maybe the neck gets affected, airbags come out, but there's no major harm done to the body, okay? It's just the impact. The person who walks away without long-lasting chronic issues has likely had a pretty good setup for nervous system previous to the car accident. That means he or she has already built in a nice way, healthy flow of how to express, release, okay? This was set up maybe from his caregivers. Maybe he had really good attachment. He doesn't have a whole lot already impacting the body. So whenever we talk about autoimmune and chronic symptoms, when we get to the point that we are having symptoms chronically, our cup has overflown. Means our body is already impacted with many other things, many other experiences, many other toxins, many other heavy metals, viruses, whatever it is. And that one incident can be that one thing that sends that person over the edge. So person A, who walks away from the car accident, who doesn't have any symptoms afterwards, or seemingly no symptoms afterwards, he came into that situation with sort of space and room in his body to have this experience. And so his body was actually able to sort of release and process it. It didn't, right, hold. Person B has a whole different scenario. Doesn't have good attachment, grew up with really dysregulated parents. He may have been taught to not cry. Okay. Don't express emotion, always be tough. Don't have all these, this type of language. Maybe he also was brought up in just a toxic home. Maybe he had like a lot of, exposure to maybe even chemicals or whatever it is. So going into the accident, his cup was already quite full. Maybe even already overflowing. So potentially he already had a little bit of fatigue. He had a little bit of joint pain. He had a little bit of stiffness. His system wasn't in this nice flow, right? So the nervous system wasn't in this nice flow like person A. So when the impact happened to person B, his body responded in this sort of that's the only way that I can think to even explain, is to give that action, because I feel like it gives a good visual and a good understanding for what happens in the body, right? So he holds on and doesn't process this impact, this trauma, we'll call it, okay? Then his body responds. So let's say it's an energetic initial response in the body. However, once the energy hits, the body's physiology, it manifests into actual physical symptoms, because the way that trauma impacts the nervous system, okay? His body, the nervous system, is our fight or flight and our freeze responses in the body. So the nervous system is responsible for every automatic. When we talk about nervous system on this channel, we're talking about the autonomic nervous system, the ANS. The ANS is made up of basically two branches, the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is our fight or flight responses. It's activation. Okay? We need this actually for getting motivated in the morning, for going to work, for getting our kids off to school, for going having a workout. We also need it in case we're in major threat and we actually do need to fight or flight fast. Right? That adrenaline kicks in. Adrenaline is a huge part. The adrenal glands are a huge part of the sympathetic nervous system. The adrenal glands kick in. They fire off adrenaline, and they give us, it is a literal chemical hormone or stress hormone. And it fires off, and the body goes into an activation and protects you, right? That's what it's there for. Then there's the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest. That's not the whole story for the parasympathetic, but in this video, where we're keeping it pretty brief, it's the parasympathetic. However, there are branches to the parasympathetic, high tone dorsal, and the vagus nerve is part of the parasympathetic, which is the ventral vagal, which is our social engagement and how we respond to our environment. So these are all obviously extremely healthy and important functions for us to have on board. Our autonomic nervous system is responsible also for every automatic function of our body. So our digestion. I already mentioned that it was very, very closely related to our adrenal, right? Adrenal glands. Our kidneys, our liver, all of these organs that we need for proper detoxification, our function is responsible, our ANS function is responsible for these organs. Our heartbeat, our saliva, our body temperature, all of these functions, our digesting of our food, all of these things are functioning through the autonomic nervous system, okay? So person B goes through that car accident and his body gets jerked around and he holds on to this experience. He also has held in his body a lot of other experiences from childhood, from not having proper attachment to his caregivers growing up. And maybe he even had some abuse. Maybe he's currently even in a toxic relationship. So his body is already living in a state of fight or flight. So let's just say this is the range of like a healthy flow, right? So we have some sympathetic activation in the morning. We get up, we go to work, maybe we take a break or we have a snack, then we go back to work, we go to lunch, we go into that rest and digest, that parasympathetic where we're digesting our food, our body is settled, our adrenal glands are very calm, and then we have some activation. Maybe we go work out after work, and then we come down and we have dinner and we go to bed at night, right? So there's this healthy flow. Person B who has the car accident does not already have healthy flow. Person A has healthy flow. He's like already set up with a nice system that's balanced. I also want to say, there's so much to this, but I do want to make an important point and say, I don't know many people with this healthy flow. Okay, most people have some dysregulation that is going on in their body because of our overstimulated society that we live in. Our adrenaline is being triggered and pushed like all the time. News, social media. If you live in a city, certainly just traffic, being a parent. All of these things are quite stimulating to the system. And our bodies are not designed to be living in activation as much as we are in our modern world. So even though I'm using this example, person A and person B, I want to make sure that I'm clear. Even someone who has a really healthy system coming into the world, and maybe the first 7 years of their life were really, really stable and really, really safe. They had a very safe environment and all of these things. We go through so many different experiences and challenges in our life, okay? We come into the world already with an imprint, most of us, from past lives. This is where the spiritual component of this all comes into play. Because there is an imprint in the energetic body and the auric field of our body that we come in with. I believe that we have thousands and thousands of past lives. In each life, and I realize I'm kind of branching off a little bit, but I think it's important. Each life, we are dealt a certain set of challenges so that we can have growth. I do believe that our soul chooses those challenges in order to receive certain growth and certain wisdom in certain areas. For example, I think I definitely chose my parents. I chose my upbringing. I chose my ancestral lineage so that I would have these experiences that led me to lupus so that I could be here with you today, right now. I don't think that these are coincidences or accidents. And so that's why this trauma and nervous system piece is so intertwined with our spirituality. Because once we become a little bit more regulated and we work with this more, and we are able to release the trauma, and we understand that felt sense of what it feels like to be relieved and come back to our authentic self, we see these types of things clearly, more clearly. Okay. So going back to person B. So, okay, and person A. So person A, like I said, it's not that he doesn't have lessons that he has to learn in this life, or challenges, or maybe even some level of dysregulation going on in his system, right? It's just that he hasn't had so much, enough yet, that it's impacting his body on a chronic level through chronic symptoms. So he's just had less than person B, okay? And this is why most of us develop chronic symptoms later in life. A lot of us. Because maybe we did have healthy, strong, family systems and things coming in. Maybe something happened to us as a teenager. And maybe then after that happened, let's say we got into a car accident as a teenager. Let's say we broke our leg as a teenager. Let's say we lost a friend to an accident, right? We went through tremendous loss. Let's say we lost a parent as a teenager. Then we have sort of ripple effect, right, of trauma situations. And we didn't know how to process our grief, so we turned to alcohol, okay? Then we didn't know how to deal with the addiction of alcohol. And I don't know, we started smoking weed. Then we got into wrong crowds and we had toxic relationships. So then we develop something chronic comes on around 35 or whatever it is, 40. So this is sort of the accumulation of how things can happen, and how a lot of people will say, everything changed after I had this one incident. A lot of people will understand that. And we see this actually in the ACE studies, the Adverse Childhood Experiences studies, which says that I believe it's 70 to 80% of people with chronic symptoms, chronic illness, and autoimmune can trace it back to an early childhood event, trauma. Again, it doesn't have to be early childhood. It could have happened when we were 10 or 12 or 13, okay? Even 20, I think. I mean, I don't know what the age is for that, but I will say I do think that 70 to 80% is a small number. That's just the people who remember the event. I mean, how many of us have our chronic symptoms because of an event we don't remember, or we don't understand all of this, what I've just explained, right? And so we say, oh, we didn't have that. And so that person isn't counted in that 70 to 80%. So I actually think that that's a low number. That's just my opinion. So back to person A and person B. So person A, he had some space in his system to handle this accident. Person B, the one who ends up with chronic symptoms, was already dealing with a tight capacity, a tight window of tolerance. Okay, so he was already sort of, his body, his system was already not in a healthy flow, his nervous system. Okay, so it sent him even more over the edge. And so after this car accident, he started having worse chronic symptoms, and maybe he was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. Maybe his digestion got really, really bad. Who knows? He may have started having skin issues or whatever it is, chronic fatigue, chronic pain. So person B might say it was this accident and that's why I have all this. So he might be just dealing with this accident in his therapy or in his whatever it is. And maybe he doesn't go back and do trauma work on the things that led up previous to this. So his healing maybe gets a little bit better, but he's never really fully functioning again. And this is where I think a lot of people get confused when they're trying to heal. Because they only see, it's like blinders, they only see the big event that sent them over the edge. And they don't want to deal with or look at. And by the way, sometimes that's enough. Sometimes people heal a little bit, it's enough, and they're in that, their cup is 3/4 full. They don't have much space for anything else. But maybe they have a life after this that is low impact, low stress. Now they might even create a life that is very protective and very, they might actually be in a sort of like a cocoon, living in a cocoon of safety. Not realize it, but that's what they do, okay? Some people, myself included, are able to see, or I guess I understood this. I did enough learnings and education around autoimmune and chronic symptoms that I understood this concept really well. I actually was introduced to this concept when I did the GAPS diet, which is a ketogenics diet. It's a gut healing diet, years ago. And then through integrative doctors that I've worked with. And then again, as I did my trauma education through Irene Lyon, who I recommend that you go to her YouTube channel. So when I started healing and doing this work, I went all the way back. Because I knew that it wasn't just one thing. Even though my symptoms got a lot worse after I had my kids, I knew actually my symptoms did not start then. Even though that's when I was like very much over the edge and like having all kinds of things were happening. I didn't even understand. If I was like following conventional medicine at the time, I was already out of that system. But if I was following it, I probably would have been diagnosed with like 5 or 6 different types of things because I was having like so many random things happen. I had to really get clear on like exactly all the things that led up once I started learning about trauma, and things continue to unravel for me. I continue to get shown and have a clearer picture of what it was that actually really did lead up to my symptoms, because it was such an accumulation of so many things. And as I get deeper with this work, I get deeper with my trauma healing. My nervous system becomes more and more regulated. And then I get even clearer and even clearer and even clearer. And then we get, not just me, but people who are doing this work, get really aligned with their authentic self and why they came here. So it is very much a spiritual awakening, very, very much an awakening when we go through this process. So that was a pretty detailed, I think, good explanation of what trauma is. And there's so many layers to this topic, and I want to be able to touch on all of them, but I do want to make these videos pretty short and digestible for you guys. So I hope that was a really good explanation, and that you share this and ask some questions below in the comments. I'm happy to answer them, and I will see you guys on the next video. Bye.